So our third award recipient this evening is Doug House, and who was an author of a Royal Commission, which not everybody can claim. Nous accueillons maintenant Nora Duke. Nora is going to introduce Doug, and Nora's work with the Fortis Group spans across various different sectors of business. She's in previous roles been the President Chief Executive Officer of Fortis Properties, Vice President of Hospitality Services of Fortis Properties, and Vice President of Customer and Corporate Services of Newfoundland Power. She's confident and open-minded and dedicated to a lot of the propositions that we're talking about today about people and the importance of people in success for business and for the region and for individual welfare. And with that, she today is Executive Vice President, Sustainability and Chief Human Resources Officer for Fortis. Ladies and gentlemen, Nora Duke.
Well, good evening, everyone. So I have to start out by telling you I'm not going to cheat. We were given 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to stick to that. So I'm so very proud tonight to introduce the first Newfoundland and Labrador recipient of this Atlantic Canada Award, Dr. Doug House. I had the pleasure of meeting Doug some 25 years ago, Doug. I'm dating myself here now, at a time when he was leading much-needed efforts related to our provincial economy as chair of the Economic Recovery Commission. And it was not long after that, that initial introduction, that I came to understand the deep insight, the deep intellect that Doug brought to a broad range of social and public policy matters in our province. In hindsight, it was probably no surprise he's a Rhodes Scholar, for goodness sake. So on a brief side note, I would say it was on this trip across the pond to Oxford that he met Jeannie, and they later married. Doug and Jeannie have 3 children and 5 granddaughters, and we're so pleased, Jeannie, to have you here with us tonight. Doug was an active and engaged public service leader, having served as deputy minister in various social policy, planning, innovation, economic development portfolios. He did it all. I thought the award write-up for Doug that I read touched on an intriguing aspect of his career. It said it was a bridging of academia and public service, and this was so true. As more recent years have seen him bring back his years of learning and experience to academic and research at Memorial University. Doug has worn many hats over the years: deputy minister, chair, researcher, teacher, advisor. And all of these roles he held with an underlying pride in and commitment to our province, his roots, and for that we are really grateful. But he wears other hats as well: author, athlete, and champion of family. Doug has authored 7 books, and he tells me another in progress. One such book was about his father, Edgar House, called An Extraordinary Ordinary Man. And he was certainly a significant role model, as was his wife, Margaret, for the House family and for many, many other Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. As an athlete, Doug has tried it all: soccer, tennis. Actually, he talked to me about his next tennis game tonight. And hockey, the list goes on. He's done it all so well. So much so that he's been inducted into our Provincial Hall Sport of Fame. I understand that he's such a good hockey player that the Montreal Canadiens courted him in his early years. And he had to make that difficult decision on whether to leave Newfoundland for professional hockey or continue his studies. I am willing to bet he remains an avid hockey enthusiast, perhaps only as a fan now, though. Tonight, we add to Doug's prior recognition as a member of the Order of Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Dr. Doug House as the recipient of Frank McKenna Award.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Nora for those kind words. And I'd also like to tell everybody that Nora's sister, Kathy Duke, was one of the important members of our Economic Recovery Commission during the 1990s as our executive director. And there are many other people that were involved in that commission, in the earlier commission that I chaired, and in other positions that I've held, who really have contributed so much to the work that I've been involved in, that I really think of this as being kind of, although it's for me, I think it's also a kind of for the collective group, the people that were involved with me in all of these activities. I want to thank Jeannie. I won't look at her. Jeannie is a lawyer, and she just finished a term as the chair of the Health Research Ethics Authority in Newfoundland. So she's got a significant career in her own right. But for me, she's being the comrade, the rock, I guess, on which I've built my life for the past 51 years, would you believe? Long time. And Nora is right that I've been trying to think of this, work towards this, bridging this gap between academia and public service. And I've also tried to, I think, apply social science knowledge. There's no good having social science knowledge if you don't do something with it. So applying social science knowledge to policy development is a very important part of what I've been trying to do. Of course, at times you feel discouraged and you have your own self-doubts and so on. And it's great to have somebody like Jeannie who can sort of buck you up and say, come on, get on with it, and off you go. I would like to thank, of course, the Public Policy Forum. I have to tell you, for me, it was a great surprise to suddenly get this email and phone call telling me that I was going to get this award. And I can't help but say that I was delighted. I was very happy to hear that. I was also delighted to hear that it was going to be called the Frank McKenna, Leadership and Public Policy Award. There's no doubt in my mind that Frank McKenna was one of the best provincial premiers that we've ever had in Canada. I thought back to a time during the early 1990s. I can't remember exactly what year. It was about 92 or 93. I spent my Christmas week, between Christmas and New Year's, traveling to the other Atlantic provinces and making presentations to their cabinets about a project that we were involved in at the time on income security reform. And I think it was a very important project, which it still needs to be done, like a lot of things that one works on over time. And I'm glad to say that I think what we were trying to do in devising that program was to build into it rewards for people to work, opportunities for people to get better educated, opportunities for people to be entrepreneurial. In other words, a lot of the values that Frank McKenna was espousing in New Brunswick. And I'd like to thank you, sir, because you probably don't even remember this, but at the time, you and your cabinet did agree that you would be supportive of having like a pilot project for this program in Newfoundland and Labrador. And you would advise the federal government of that decision. So, I should tell you that in my little instructions before I came up here, I was told that I had to speak for 5 minutes on a public policy topic of my choice. I've used up 4 minutes and haven't got to that yet, but here we go. I recently reread, because it was germane to tonight's activities, the book by Donald Savoy, called Pulling Against Gravity, which is about economic development efforts during the McKenna years. And I was struck by the fact, I have to admit, that I wrote a book about economic development during the Clyde Wells years, which coincided. It was at the same time. And it was called Against the Tide. So the two titles were quite similar. One of the things that Professor Savoy talks about in his book, and I think it's something that we all in Atlantic Canada should give more thought to, is that one of the reasons why it's difficult, even if you have somebody really good at the helm, to bring about the kind of change that we need and that we all desperately want to have, is that a lot of national policies in this country, Canadian national policies, have not necessarily applied and been useful to Atlantic Canada and Atlantic Canadian provinces. And in some cases, they've actually hindered development in our provinces. And I'm thinking of the Newfoundland and Labrador case. This would apply to hydroelectricity development and distribution, for example, a big one. Fisheries development. So I think one of the things that we should be doing as we move ahead is not to bellyache about this, but to try to find ways in which we can convince Uncle Ottawa that we need to have national policies that serve our needs as well as other parts of the country, and that we can get the federal government to support our provincial governments in Atlantic Canada in a lot of the activities that we're currently involved in, including, of course, the big issue of today, which was the immigration and the importance of immigration and rebuilding, I guess, our population base. Sorry, I'm getting dry here. I feel I'm thanking a lot of people. I'm feeling a little bit like Roger Federer, when he wins a tennis tournament, and he gets. I'd like to thank the ball boys and the ball girls and the umpire and whoever, my mother up there, whatever. But I would, seriously, I would like to thank the organizers of today's event and this evening's event. It's very impressive. It's got a great turnout, very attentive audience, and thank you very much. And a lot of good speakers with a lot of good ideas and a lot of food for thought, I think, for all of us as we leave here tonight. So finally, just thank you all in the audience, I guess, here, for coming. Thank you very much.